Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, children. Yesterday we discussed about the causes of the World War II. In that we discussed about various causes, Germany and Treaty of Versailles, failure of League of Nations, post-war crisis in Germany, the rise of Adolf Hitler, Munich Pact. Today we are going to discuss about the course of World War II, and in this we are going to discuss about the nature of the war, outbreak of the war, important events that took place, that is Lend-Lease, invasion of Russia, Battle of Stalingrad, Battle of El Alamein, surrender of Italy, Pearl Harbor incident, war in the Asia-Pacific region, Japanese aggression in Southeast Asia, Battle of Midway and Battle of Guadalcanal, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are all the various subtopics we are going to discuss under this. First one, nature of the war. World War II, it was fought on two distinct fronts, Europe and Asia Pacific. In Europe, the war was fought by the Allies against Germany and Italy, and in the Asia Pacific, the Allies fought Japan. The war in Europe also extended to North Africa, which had been occupied by Germany. Actually, this World War II, it was a modern war fought with heavy military equipments such as tanks, submarines, battleships, aircraft carriers, flight planes and bomber planes. So this involved a very large resource. Since all the equipments needed to be manufactured, there had to be need for raw materials to manufacture, and they should have the capacity and technical uh, to improve the military hardware. Next one, outbreak of war. Britain and France declared war on Germany in September 1939. So in June 1940, Italy joined Germany, and in September 1940, Japan also joined the Axis powers. So there was a little military action immediately after the declaration of war. So Britain had already begun to build up its military capabilities, and all young men were conscripted for military duty. So the first years of the war were a time of spectacular success of the Germany army. By 1941, all the mainland till the mainland of Europe till the Russian frontier was under the control of the Axis powers. So the Germany army followed a different military tactic called lightning strike, that is called blitzkrieg. So using this, it started to storm into various countries and overturn them. So in this picture, you can see that blitzkrieg. This was the military tactic used by Germany. Next one, the British Royal Navy. So the British Royal Navy continued to be the most powerful among the European naval forces. and ensured that a seaborne invasion of Britain was not possible. So, Britain depended on large scale imports of food, raw materials, and industrial goods by sea from its empire and the US. So, to attack this, Germany developed a fleet of submarines which caused havoc, especially in the Atlantic Ocean area, by sinking large number of civilian ships carrying supplies to Britain. So, in this picture, you can see the British Royal Navy. Next one, some important events had taken place during that time. The first one is Dunkirk. In May 1940, more than 3 lakh British and French soldiers they were forced back to the beaches in Dunkirk. These soldiers actually they were under heavy fire. There was no all-out attack by the Germans, and nearly 3,38,000 men were rescued by the Britain. Britain would have found it difficult to regroup if so many of her soldiers had been lost at Dunkirk. Now the next important event is Battle of Britain. By July 1940, it was feared that the Germans were planning to invade Britain. So the fighter planes of the Royal Air Force, so Spitfires and Hurricanes, these are the names of the two military tactics used by them. This is called Spitfires and this is called Hurricanes. These two were able to inflict severe losses on the German bombers. Next one, Lend-Lease in 1941 to 45. President Roosevelt, he realized that the United States had to change its policy of isolation but could not intervene directly in the war in Europe because it was not politically feasible. So he started a program of Lend-Lease in March 1941. So according to that, arms, food, military equipments and other supplies were sent to Britain but disguised as a loan, not for free, so which it would return after the war. So this made the resources of Britain to a great extent it affected. So between 1941 and 1945, the total aid under Lend-Lease amounted to rupees 46.5 billion dollars. Invasion of Russia 1941 to 1942. So in June 1941, the German army invaded Russia. The long-term objectives of this move, it want to seize the land for settling the German people. They wanted to destroy the communist regime and also they want to exploit Russia's natural resources, especially oil. So the German strategy, military strategy of lightning strikes was initially successful and the army penetrated 1,000 miles into Russian territory. The German army then marched to Moscow also, but ultimately the resistance by the Soviet army and the fierce Russian winter defeated the German army. Battle of Stalingrad. In August 1942, the Germans attacked a place called Stalingrad. There were about 50 million civilian deaths. 15 million people lost their lives during the war, and about 10 million members of the armed forces were killed. So, altogether, over one tenth of Russia's population died because of this battle. Even though, in spite of that, people remained loyal to the government. Despite Hitler's hopes of anti-Stalin revolution, people were loyal to the government, and they successfully defended the city of Stalingrad. And it stopped the German advancing into the Soviet Union and marked the turning of the war in favor of the Allies. So after that, Russians considered it to be one of the greatest battles of the Great Patriotic War. So they considered this war, Russians considered this war as a Great Patriotic War. Now, Battle of El Alamein. The Allied forces under Montgomery counter attacked and they defeated the German and Italian forces at a place called El Alamein in North Africa. So, in the early years of the war, German forces under General Rommel were remarkably successful in occupying North Africa. But because of the Allied forces, the German army was chased across the desert out of North Africa. This provided the base for the Allied forces to invade Italy. Now, surrender of Italy. We discussed a lot about Mussolini in our previous chapter. Mussolini had been thrown out, and the new government of Italy surrendered to the Allies in 1943. The Germans set Mussolini um, as a puppet in the north. Mussolini was killed in April 1945 by some Italian partitions. End of Hitler. The Allied forces under the General Eisenhower. He invaded a place called Normandy in France. So Germans fought and the war continued for another year, and finally it came to an end in the year 1945. So after that, Hitler committed a suicide in April 1945. So then Germany was divided into two sections. Now, Pearl Harbor incident. In 1941 December, Japan attacked American naval installations in a place called Pearl Harbor, in a place called Hawaii, without any warning. So the idea was to cripple America's Pacific fleet. So if they do so, automatically Japan would not face any opposition in its offensive against Southeast Asian countries. So in this picture you can see how they attacked the harbor. Now, Battle of Midway and Battle of Guadalcanal. So, the US Navy defeated the Japanese Navy in the battle called Battle of Midway, and this battle, it turned in the favor of the Allied countries. The same way, the Battle of Guadalcanal, which took place in the Solomon Islands, it was a combined offensive involving the army and the navy, and this battle also lasted for several months. Now, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As a top secret project using the latest scientific advances, the US developed an atomic bomb immensely more powerful than conventional many explosives also. So the Japanese generals, they refused to surrender, and finally US dropped an atomic bomb on a place called Hiroshima in Japan. So as the Japanese still refused to surrender, another atom bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, and ultimately Japan announced surrender on 15th August 1945 and formally signed to September 1945, bringing an end to World War II by surrendering. But the effects of the war, no, it was very, it created a lot of problems to the Japan. Long term effects, not short term. The throwing the bombed places were suffering for decades, many decades, and long term effects on the local population of the radiation from the atomic bombs were not clearly understood at that time. So, Japan suffered heavy losses. Okay, today we discussed about the course of the war. Tomorrow we will be discussing the effects of the war. Thank you, children.